So the idea behind this evening is global engineering. So how can we become leaders in society? How can we help tackle those big issues? You may have heard of some of them. You may have heard of sustainability issues, infrastructure issues, energy issues. Engineers Without Borders likes to work on the poverty side of things. There's a lot of issues out there that engineers really ought to work on. And it's talks like this we're going to have tonight that are really going to frame how the engineering profession can move forward into leadership to tackle those issues. So more explicitly, EWB is a network of leaders from across the country. We have chapters in pretty much every major city on every major campus. So there's a few UCalgary members in the room tonight, so if you're sticking around after, I'm sure you can hear some of our stories and find out ways to get involved here. But I really want to stress that EWB is a great organization to get involved in if you're an engineering student and you're looking for leadership. You're looking to develop as a leader and you're looking to contribute. Briefly, before I pass over to Vic, we work in Africa in 3 areas: water and sanitation, agriculture, and rural infrastructure. Although I have to stress that not all of our work is technical. In fact, barely any of it's technical. We work on more of an organizational level to help organizations on the ground in these countries do what they're already doing helping them do that a lot better. In Canada, again, we work on Canadian aid effectiveness. We lobby the government. We help Canadians connect to Africa by giving them chances to try fair trade products, by giving them chances to learn about Africa. And finally, we work on global engineering with faculty members and professionals such as Vic Perry. So without further ado, I'm just going to switch the presentation over and pass it over to Vic.
Okay, I would like everybody to close their eyes, but that doesn't mean you can go to sleep. Okay? When I snap my fingers, you're going to wake up, and it's going to be in the fall of 2020. And I just happened to have brought along a few headline clippings here that you might find in the newspaper in the year 2020. So this is something you might see if we're successful in doing some of the things we want to accomplish over the next 10 years. First civil engineer to receive a Nobel Prize. The world population passes 7 billion. We have an ever-increasing demand going on in the world right now in terms of more people. A recent survey reveals that civil engineering is the most honorable and prestigious profession. Now, believe it or not, there are countries in the world where that is true. Not necessarily so in Canada, where it's not considered the #1 most honorable profession. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't by certain people, but there are countries where it is, and I think it's one of the goals that we need to accomplish. The Canadian Society for Civil Engineering gives Canada's infrastructure a B+ rating. That's significantly better than it is today in terms of its overall rating, but it's a target. How about another one? The CFCE's infrastructure guidelines are adopted by the United Nations. So we have a Made in Canada model for sustainable infrastructure, and it's adopted globally. Okay, that's just a few slides to kind of get you thinking about what things could be like in the 2020. If you remember the story of Alice in Wonderland, Alice slips down into the rabbit hole. And she's kind of wandering around, and she's lost. And she comes to this Cheshire cat, and she says, "Excuse me, I'm lost." And so the cat says, "Can I help you?" "Yes." And she says, "Can you tell me which way to go?" And the cat says, "Well, where do you want to go?" And she says, "Anywhere will do." And the cat says, "Well, you're already there, or any road will get you there." So it doesn't matter which road you take if it doesn't matter where you go. So if you really don't know where you want to go, you can take any route and do pretty much anything, because it'll get you there. Matter of fact, you're already there, so you don't have to really do anything. So if you don't know where you want to go, then you also don't need leadership. That's what we want to talk about, is leadership. So if there's no place to go, you don't know where you want to go, why do you need leadership? I think what the world needs most today is leadership. The world right now is going through some really major changes globally. You know, historically, people look to the United States and the United States president as setting leadership at the global platform. There was always that recognition that the U.S. was the most powerful country and they led the way. They set the standard. They initiated a lot of things globally. Today, that's changing. The U.S. has a bunch of their own problems that they're dealing with, but China is also raising in terms of its influence in the world. Population is growing, economically it's increasing. There's a lot of other countries as well where a lot of changes are going on. So right now in the world, there seems to be a little bit of a lack of leadership globally, and I think that creates a lot of unrest for people. Strong leadership actually gives people confidence in the future. They believe that things will be better in the future if you have strong leadership. So what the world really needs right now, mostly, is strong leadership. It needs strong leaders. So when I was asked to come and speak to you tonight about the skills required for engineers to be successful with their careers, that was the request that was given to me. Leadership was I think the number one thing that was most important to talk about. So what is a leader? Let me give you an example. If you're a manager and you're asked to build an ark, you go about collecting together the team, you instruct them how to cut the wood, how to assemble and build the ark. If you're a leader, you get the people together and you instill a vision about the freedom you gain by being on the water. You inspire them, and you create a vision of some future situation where you're out in the sea, sailing around, you have all this freedom, you can go where you want, and then you give them the resources, and you let them figure out how to build the ark. So leadership is really about instilling a passion about a vision into a group of people. It really comes down to that. That's a simple thing about leadership, is that you have to have a vision and instill a passion in the people to accomplish it. And they give them some tools, obviously, to help. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how my career developed. And you may learn some lessons from that, and you may not. You may learn some things that you don't want to do, as well as some things you may want to do. So I'm going to go back to when I was 5 years old. When I was 5, my father had bought an old house and was going to do a major renovation on it. So here's a young lad who, putting around a construction site, actually living in a construction site. And so every little piece of scrap lumber that my father would cut off or whatnot, I'd grab the lumber and I'd get some nails, and I started building furniture. So I was building all this furniture, and not too many people would sit in it, mind you, but at least I thought it was good furniture. So that was sort of my start into building things and my interest in construction, and then it led to building tree forts. So I built a one-story tree fort and some trees, and then I got the idea I could build a second story. And eventually I had 3 stories, so I had these trapdoors, and I had these 3-story tree houses in the woods. And then I thought, if I'm ever attacked, I need to get away. So I built some bridges from tree to tree to tree. So I started building bridges. So this is about, I'm like 7, 8, 9 years old. Until one day my father strolled up in the woods and he saw these bridges, and he said, no, these have to come down. Somebody's going to fall and kill himself. I wasn't a structural engineer at that time, and he didn't have great confidence in my design. Anyway, so I then, when I was about 14, I guess, I got the interest in gasoline and motors. I started to build. I wanted to build a motorbike. So I got a gasoline engine, and some pipe, and some wheels, and I started building a motorbike. And gasoline still gets me excited when I smell it. So I really like that gasoline power. But anyway, I finished high school, and I knew when I was getting near the end of high school I wanted to be an engineer. I knew for sure at that point. But the question was, what type of engineer? And so I had to kind of think back, and I really reverted back to my early days of building furniture and tree houses and bridges, and I decided I'd become a civil engineer. So in 1970, I entered Dalhousie University, and well, actually I entered St. FX and then migrated into Dalhousie University in Halifax and took civil engineering. So I started after graduating as a structural engineer. I specialized in structures, and I graduated and I got into consulting business in structural engineering. So that was my early introduction into engineering, and I knew that since I enjoyed buildings and bridges and that, I needed to be a structural engineer in order to understand how they were built and designed and constructed. So in about '82, I migrated into the cement industry as a structural engineer, helping and training structural engineers in designing in concrete. And then that led me into Lafarge, through the Cement Association into Lafarge. And then in Lafarge, I kind of migrated through the organization and moved around the world a bit, and lived in different parts of Canada, and worked a while in France, and eventually I worked in Calgary for a while and left Calgary, and then I came back to Calgary. So I ended up back in Calgary. So I've been in Calgary here for about 9 or 10 years, and I now run the division of ultra-high performance concrete. So that's a little bit of my background. But I'm also the president of the Canadian Society for Civil Engineers. And I took on that role effective last June. So you might ask why I would get involved in CSCE, or why I'm the president. Well, I believe that there's a quote by Sir Winston Churchill which kind of best describes my belief. And it's, we make a living by what we get, we make a life by what we give. So I really believe that you have to give back. The profession is what it is today because of the people who came before and made it what it is. And so I believe that I need to give something back and make it a little bit better when I leave it than when I found it. That's sort of the way I try to live my life. I can't say I do that perfectly, but at least I try. So one of the advantages I get out of being involved in CSCE, which are a little bit selfish, is basically the networking opportunity. It's a great chance for me to get to know and meet a lot of people. If you get involved in a committee, for example, and it doesn't matter which organization you do that in, but if you get involved in a committee as a volunteer, it's a great place to learn some of the skills that you need to be successful. When you're involved in a committee, you have to negotiate your ideas with the other people in the committee. So you have to learn your negotiating skills. You have to learn to give and take, interpersonal skills with other people. And eventually, if you get to be chair of a committee, you learn to practice leadership. And you get to practice it in an environment where your employer is not watching you. So you can make mistakes, and because it's a volunteer organization, people aren't so critical. They're very forgiving because they know you're a volunteer, you're doing your best, you learn on the job. It's a really good place to learn. Any volunteer organization will help to teach you negotiating, interpersonal, and leadership skills. But now that when I was a young engineer, graduated out of university, I focused, or I recognized that I had a good technical background, but I didn't feel that I was well qualified in the soft skills, all the stuff you get, like leadership and negotiating and interpersonal, all those skills. I just didn't feel that I got a very good training in that when I was in university. And so that's one of the selfish reasons why I did get involved in an organization like CSCE, for example. But now that I'm at the other end of my career, I'm still involved in CSCE. And for my fundamental belief that I need to give back, but also there's a little bit of selfish gain in it as well. Nobody gives all their time totally for nothing. They expect to get something back. That way there's it's a win-win and everybody benefits. When I work on a committee now, I'm always observing people on the committee. And when I my company and my group, we're always looking for people. Right now we're recruiting 2 engineers. We're looking for a bridge engineer and a project manager. So when I work on these committees with different engineers that are on the committees, I'm always observing. And sometimes I see somebody that says, there's a potentially up and coming potential leader. And Lafarge is always looking for leaders. So we're always trying to recruit people. So it's a great way, and lots of times, to get a job. You never know, someday the phone might ring and I'll be calling and say, are you interested in a job? So, those are the things that you also get. It's a two-sided coin when you work and volunteer in an organization. There's people who see you, get to know you, you network. I've changed careers 3 or 4 times, as you can appreciate, from consulting to a cement association to a cement company. I never applied for any jobs in my entire career. The jobs came to me through networking. So networking pays off. If you want to develop your career, you need to get involved, you need to network, you need to be known. It's the people you meet in the network that will really help you make the opportunities available in your career. So I can't, emphasize that enough, how important that is.